Okay. Good evening. Good evening. Welcome to Liberty Baptist Church of Chicago Cyber Bible Study, where we are talking about men building the kingdom and using as the backdrop Tony Evans' book, Kingdom Man, and a little bit of the associated curriculum. So we welcome you tonight. Hi, Kareen. How are you? How are you? Good to see you. Tonight we will start up in a few minutes. Geraldine, how are you today? All right. Hey, Sister Barbara Ellis, how are you? You might actually come up in our discussion tonight. Something that I experienced a year or so ago outside of the church when you were there, but I don't know yet. Hey, Sister Bishop, how are you? How are you? All right, we're going to give everybody a few minutes to come on board and introduce our panel again and go from there. Hey, Sister Smith, how you doing from Louisiana? Deacon Stan Watts is always in the house. Zena, we got your husband's mic working today, so you're going to be able to hear him real good. Jabril, how are you? All right. Hi, Joe's Go. Hi, he's saying hi, Pastor, so I'm saying hi back to you. I'm sure I didn't pronounce that correctly, but good to see you. Hey, Sister Smith. Diane, how are you? Carmela, hello. Hello, Brother Deacon Thomas is in the house. Is in the house. 3 more minutes, and then we will start our Cyber Bible class. Hello to all of you who I can't see on YouTube. God bless you all. God bless each and every one of you. Hey, Sister Regina, how are you doing today? Oh, Minister G is on YouTube, so hello. Sam piped you in, put you through to us today. Deacon Preston Smith Jr. is on the line. Hello, Deacon. Juanita, how are you, Juanita? Lynette, hello. Everybody's coming on in tonight. I know you really enjoyed class last week. We're glad to have these gentlemen back tonight. Hello, Sister LaGrone, how are you today? We're glad to have everybody back in the house tonight. Sharon, hello. All right, Sister Gray, how are you doing? Liz, how are you? I know who you are now on YouTube when I see you pop up there. All right. Let us get ready to get going with our lesson tonight. Again, good evening, everyone. We are getting ready for the second night of our panel. I'm thinking we may have 2 more sessions with us for a total of 4 sessions. I want you to pay close attention, and that Sam can get a close-up. These are the books that we'll be using, that our lessons are really coming from out of the next few weeks. Kingdom Man, the author is Tony Evans. This is going to be the curriculum of our men's ministry for next year. And so I really hope that many of you have told the men in your house to kind of gather around to listen to our discussions, particularly the one tonight. But we are going to be in the Kingdom Man curriculum, and our topic is men building the kingdom. We didn't go directly with Tony Evans' Kingdom Man, even though we're going to define Kingdom Man and all that, because we have taken some biblical texts, we have taken some questions that are outside of the scope of Tony Evans' curriculum, but have used his curriculum as a foundation, and we're looking forward to all of the men of our church buying the book as well as buying the workbook next year, when we hope by next year we can actually be meeting in person and virtually. Virtual is not going anywhere. We'll be meeting in person and virtually. So as we begin our lesson tonight, let us go to God in prayer. God, we thank you for yet another night to study your word. We thank you for these your people who are online, on YouTube, on Facebook, wanting to grow through you. God, we thank you for this panel of men that are here tonight. We ask that you order their thoughts, order their minds. We thank you, God, for their sincerity. We thank you for their conversation, because their conversation has made us better. God, guide us now as we continue to live by your will and your way. In Jesus' name we pray, amen. Ladies and gentlemen, as a religious community, as a people, we have suffered from a pandemic much longer than COVID-19. That pandemic, that epidemic, that illness, whatever is your word of choice today, for the church and specifically the black church, has to deal with the pandemic of the absence of men. The absence of, maybe since the mid-1900s, the absence of grasping the consciousness of men willing to build the kingdom, and men who, as Tony Evans describes, are kingdom men. And so tonight, we're going to discuss that with our panel. If you have some thoughts when I do sit at the desk, if you have some thoughts by which you want to chime in and give your comments, that would be great. But that is really what we want to kind of deal with tonight, is the pandemic of the loss of men in the church, why that is, but also to be solution-oriented tonight about what things we can possibly do to bring about the change and the emergence of kingdom men in the community. Now, the emergence of kingdom men, ladies and gentlemen, does not mean that we don't need the ladies. Again, I want you to tell your fellow ladies, as if you would on Sunday morning, that this is just the men's time. And so we're talking about men's issues tonight, but we definitely want to hear from everyone who is represented to some degree on tonight. So, gentlemen, I want to introduce again our panel. I'm going to start from my right side. We have back again Deacon Marcellus Barnes. We're glad to have you here today. We have Ray Berryhill, who's now a sophomore in college. We have his father, Randy Berryhill, here, and we have one of the co-chairs of our deacon board, Harold Greer, is here today, all right? And Deacon Barnes is the vice chair of our trustee board, and Randy and Ray do everything that we ask them to do, primarily. So, gentlemen, like I said, and you all know this as brothers, and I really want to be in dialogue with you and want you guys to be in dialogue with our congregation that's watching. We know that there's a pandemic in the church. We see it every Sunday. We see it. We've seen it for years. There's a pandemic, it seems, in the church with a shortage of men. So what I want your perspective on tonight is, what do you think has driven men away from the church, and what do you think drives men away from the church? And so we're going to start with the father-son tandem here, and then we'll go to Deacon Greer, and then we'll go to Deacon Barnes. All right? Gentlemen, what are some of your thoughts?
Good evening, Pastor. Good evening, Liberators. My thoughts on what's driving men away from the church is part of my experience with that. Visiting other churches, and one, for example, I visited Reverend T.D. Jakes' church in Atlanta. He had a thing at the Georgia Dome. And nice message. You know, he can speak the word, and I got a lot from that. But what deterred me from that, and I'm thinking a lot of other men as well, is what he asked for. There's a 3-day seminar there, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. At the end of Sunday, T.D. Jakes asked for a $100 bill from everybody that's in the Georgia Dome. And it's packed in the Georgia Dome. I'm looking around, I'm like, really? Is that really necessary? I don't know if it was or not, but I wasn't comfortable with that. And I've heard other gentlemen talk about how the church is always asking for money, 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 more money, more money. So that deters a lot of men. That kind of started deterring me from T.D. Jakes, because I thought that was over the top. So that's my take on what deters some men from church, is what they're asking for.
Yeah.
It's okay to give, it's okay to ask, but I think you got to have an understanding that other people who travel this far to go to Atlanta to see you have a life, have a job, got bills got to be paid as well. So don't overdo it.
Yeah.
Now that drives men away.
Yeah. Thank you, Brother Barry Hill. And newsflash, everybody don't have Bishop Jakes calling Liberty Baptist Church, all right? Oh, Lord. See, I don't never know what they're going to say. But I like that. I like that. I'm joking, but I like that. And one thing that we see with men, and we hear this about, oh, they want more money. Oh, they want more money. But then I like what you did when you kind of delved deeper into it. I was getting ready to ask you to go deeper. As men, when we provide for our families and have that stress or strain of providing for our families, and we're just wired differently than our wives, right? I don't think it's a bad or different, but if you're married long enough, you just got to realize you're wired differently. And because we're wired differently, almost from a skepticism standpoint most of the time, like ABC, right? You looking at it as a man, I done paid to get here. I done paid for the conference. I didn't know there was going to be another offering, right? Whether that's $100 or $20. And so as providers, the way we are wired, the way we hear that as men can be disruptive to our faith. And a lot of times here at Liberty, I am very conscious of that. I'm very conscious of how men may be wired. So that's one thing that drives away this whole money thing. And you see it more dominant with men than you do with the ladies of the church. Again, ladies, this is men's night, okay? It's men's night. All right. Ray, what do you think drives men away?
I think that what drives men away from the church is that many of them, they always blame God for like certain things that happen in their life. Like if their parents pass away or their mother passes away, they always say, God, oh, why did you forsake me? So they take that anger that their parents has passed away and they blame it on God and the church. So therefore they don't come to the churches no more. They stop praying to him because all they do is just blame God.
So what you have observed is this sort of I'm mad at God thing, right? This thing we hear, if there's a God, why is there homelessness? If there's a God, why is there violence on the south side of Chicago? I'm mad at this God because, especially as a black man, I'm growing up in this environment where I'm disenfranchised, right? I'm growing up in this environment, quite frankly, where I'm on the bottom of the totem pole because even now the ladies are ahead of us. Newsflash, y'all. Employment-wise, education-wise. And so I'm growing up on a bottom. And so what kind of God would want to do that? On top of taking my mother, and what's missed there is this whole thought of God is the God of everything. And we learn since in the beginning, evil will always exist. Sickness will always exist. And so reeling men into no longer being mad at God for the bad circumstances of life, right? And it's a man thing, but it's an immature Christian thing too. You know, because I'm Christian, everything's going to work out. No, we struggle, not against flesh and blood, but principalities and powers, evil spirits in high places. And so we got to get men to understand that this walk that we have is a struggle, right? And so it's not that our mom died, it's that God got us through that, where we would have lost our minds. So I like that, because those are two big ones. Church taking all my money, in particular the pastor. So, right, I'm going to talk about that, all right? We're going to hit this one right where it is. I got personal interest in shutting this down. The preacher taking all my money, and I'm mad at God because my life ain't right? Okay, all right. Deacon Greer.
All right, thank you, Brother Pastor. And I like what my brothers have, the father and son team has said. And I just want to add one of the things that drive me away from the church. You know, we have to look at the outside influence, right? Because, I just think about things from when you're single and you're dating, right? And if you're heavily involved in church as a man, as a man, and you meet some woman, and I'm not picking on the women, right? Because the women had faced some of the same challenges when they're in the church. But sometimes outside influences, we would say, for example, love, right? So if you constantly going to church all the time, but the woman that you so-called in love with is not a church-going person, and she was like, you going to church again? You always at the church. You go every Sunday? Can we go to a Sunday brunch or something of that nature? And so love, will sometimes drive some of the outside influence will sometimes drive you away from the church as well. And then as we think about some of the things it's having that relationship with God, right? Because when you don't have that relationship with God and you think about just going through the motions of coming to the church, and when something else better come along because you don't have that relationship with God, it'll drive you away from the church. That falls under the same line as outside influence as well. But continue to have that strong relationship with God, and he will direct your path.
Excellent. Outside influences. And we're going to be in our solution section soon. But that's why this discussion, gentlemen, is important. Because all of us don't leave here and go to places where we are in a bubble. Right? When we leave here, we got to go to work. Some of us on bowling league, some of us golf, some of us hang out, whatever it is. And so we got to be careful about outside influences. And that's why it's important to have ministries in the church. Men's ministry, women's, because we need to have a place where we can share and kind of be influenced by one another. Right? Being influenced by one another. So I like that you shared that with us, because that can be a distraction. I like that, outside influence in the relationship. Deacon Barnes.
Yes, thank you, Pastor. I first want to touch on what was discussed first, and that was sometime there are churches that put more of their emphasis on the giving side. And I remember as a young man going to other churches, not here, I never experienced it here in Liberty, but everybody that's got $50 come around this way. And so you had to parade in front of the congregation, and then it went down to $5, $1. And so I think that sometimes can turn people away because they may have brought a certain amount to give, and they gave that, and now you're taking up another collection. We have to make people feel welcome when they come into the church. Some people may not have a suit to put on, but if they have a pair of slacks and a dress shirt, we should welcome them. We should make them feel welcome. Mm-hmm. But I've had people to come here to Liberty to visit, and they say, well, I'm not coming back because a couple of members alluded to I was sitting in Brother James's seat.
My Lord.
And unfortunately, I could never convince that person to come back. So we have to be careful what we say to people. And I remember Pastor AP used to say all the time, the only seat that you have is the seat that you brought into the church. Nobody has a seat. And so that's certainly if you're making statements loud enough for that person to hear, they don't really feel welcome. And especially if they're a young person, the younger the person is, the more growth that the church will have over a period of time.
Right.
So I think it's a combination of things.
I like that. I like that. It is a combination, and you guys are touching on some wonderful, wonderful things. And let's rewind back to Harold. Then we're going to go to what Deacon Barnes said, and then back to the father and son duo. We have to understand that the climate that we are attempting to do church in is much different than 60 years ago. It's much different than 1918 when the church was started. It's much different than 1960. And so now you want to say, well, Pastor, what in the world does that have to do with what Deacon Greer said? Deacon Greer said that we have to be careful of outside influences. We have to understand now that, and this is really for the black church, it's for the white church as well, but particularly the black church, we have more options on Sunday morning that we ever had in the 1900s. That is the elephant in the room. I wasn't around, but if I got some old schoolers, y'all just put your hand clap on Facebook or YouTube. There was a time where we all came to church on Sunday and we stayed all day because our civil liberties wouldn't allow us to go anywhere else. I'm sorry. Yeah, we were faithful, but the reality is you couldn't go nowhere else. You couldn't go downtown. Wasn't nobody going to serve you downtown. You didn't have economic ability to go to take your kid to Chuck E. Cheese. You wasn't paying $1,000, taking your kid to a volleyball tournament, taking your kid to AAU basketball tournament. You want to run around on Sunday playing music lessons for you. And so the world we're in is totally different. And for us to sit in here like it's not is a disservice to the building of the kingdom. And so we've got to realize there are a lot of distractions. There are a lot of options. And if we dovetail what Deacon Barnes is saying, along with Deacon Greer, we need to create an environment where we outweigh other people's options. People do not have to come to Liberty Baptist Church of Chicago. They choose to come based on how, and we're talking about men, because what men will do, because I'm guilty of this in areas outside of the church. If I don't want to do something, I'm looking for something to be wrong. Okay, I'm just going to talk about me. All y'all going to heaven. If I don't want to do something, from the time I set out to do it, China say do something, Drew say do something, I'm waiting for something to be wrong. Because I got other options. I got other places I can be. And so men have other options, and they're walking into thinking that. You know, the one thing I love about our worship, even before COVID, I would meet a man, and they would say, well, I'm going to come to your church after football season. I used to get that all the time. I'm going to come after football season. I tell them now, hey, man, we out at 1 o'clock. And nobody watches a full NFL game. By the time you get home, second quarter, and your wings will be right there next to you. Because I understand I need to make us a better option. And if for our traditionalists that are saying, well, God shouldn't have to adjust for other people, I'm trying to save souls. Right? And when you're trying to save souls, you're trying to build the kingdom and represent God, you have to adjust to save the lost. It ain't right. I've been going to church all my life. I would never put a football, but there is a population of people that will. So we have to be engaging, and even if we go into the football game with Deacon Greer or Deacon Barnes, are they enjoying it so much here it doesn't matter because the Bears going to lose anyway? I know Brother Cooper didn't like to hear that, but I'm just saying, right? So that's this is what we have to do. Understand that there are other options in how we treat one another. And if we're a man, then we're going to get to our father and son tandem. If we're men, and we're coming to a place, and our wife is already there, she's running around doing well, but then our wife is doing well, and maybe it's not even somebody saying something bad to us, Deacon Barnes, because as men of our families here, we can take it. But I don't want to hear nobody talking about Drew and China's dress. I don't want nobody stopping my daughter in the bathroom, checking her, and she got good grade, going to college. People don't have time for that. And so that will turn a man off when he sees he's coming into church and his daughter is asked to get up because she's sitting in somebody's seat. His wife working hard in church, but she ain't never happy when she come home from church. So why would he won't go? We hitting it right in the mouth today, y'all, because we want to bring men back into the fold. Now, this thing about money, one thing to the Berry Hill team here that's deep. This that we are facing is an attack of the enemy. First, you got to understand this as spiritual warfare, an attack of the enemy to draw men out of church, draw younger people out of church. But again, it's men's night tonight, so we're going to focus on it. It's an attack of the enemy on the church. Black folks are the only people that make fun of their churches and denigrate their faith. You will never see a Jewish person denigrating the synagogue. You never see a Catholic person denigrating, making jokes about their service. There is a spirit of attack because God is so special to us that we denigrate our faith. And part of it is many of us in the church have made mistakes. But then you got this issue of the pastor wants the money. Barbara Ellis, I told you that you would come up. Barbara Ellis was in, and we're going to move on to the next thing and talk about some things that Tony says with me. We have to be prepared to go to battle with some facts. Barbara Ellis was standing outside of the church with me. She was outside of the church on a Saturday on the 49th Street side when I pulled up, had my car cleaned. My car is almost 20 years old, but it was clean. And I pulled up and parked, and one of our neighbors was walking down the street and said, "Ooh, if I want to get a Corvette, I got to be a pastor." I immediately stopped him in his tracks. Barbara was there and checked him. And I checked him and said, "Man, I drove up to this church with it, and I've been working 20-something years. I go to work every day. So when you go to work like me, you can buy one too." Because of this notion that the pastor is taking our money. Because, brothers, amongst men and us men that's watching, there's jealousy. See, men like to be in control, and they don't like to see another man that they think is in control. And we're all materialistic. They don't want to see another man they think got it. And so we got to work on that spirit of jealousy and envy that's pervasive in the black community. That's why we got carjackings going on. It's envy. I don't want you to have nothing. And if you got something, I'd rather not go there. But it's interesting. Nobody ever calls Michael Jordan money hungry for selling $400 sneakers. I ain't never heard nobody get mad at Kanye, already a billionaire, charges $300 for a ticket to get in to the thing, right? We are mentally attacking the church. And so to address this issue that Brother Berry Hill is talking about, we need to be cognizant of that. We can't just say, "Oh, they shouldn't be like that." We need to hit that thing in the mouth and be about that. Watch how we ask for offerings. Watch how we do something. I'll give you a final example, then we're going to our next thing. I do accounting work for a few churches. So, Brother Berry Hill, I'm right there with you. I paid for the ticket for my client. It was my client's concert. I think the tickets were $100 a piece. I bought 2 tickets, but only one person was going. That was me. I get there. I'm enjoying the concert. It's a nice concert. And when I get to the concert, Brother Barry Hill, after I spent $200, sat down, bought the $50 souvenir book, the pastor of that particular church begins to say, and we need to have an offering line. They proceeded to ask me to get up, to go to the offering line, and I kindly looked at the usher and said, ain't no way. I have already spent $250. So we got to be careful. And we're going to talk about liberty, what liberty needs to continue to do or do better. We got to be careful not to kill our witness by begging. Not to kill our witness by begging. And let's face it, y'all know this, we got people in the church that prefer for us to beg. But we got to be strong enough as kingdom men to build the witness of the church and say, if God will take care of us, we don't need to beg. We got to trust him, right? And the church has been void of that. You know, as soon as we get a valley, we get scared. Let's go and take offering. There are times to do that systematically when we need it, but we have to be careful about not killing our witness. So we got to be welcoming in the church. One thing goes on here. I used to notice, we do a much better job of now, when we pass the peace. You know how when we pass the peace, y'all, during the service, I used to watch. We would spend more time shaking one another's hands than the visitor's hands. The purpose of passing the peace is to shake the visitor's hands or shake the member that you don't know hands. We have to consciously do that, right? That's for everybody, but that is especially for men. Because a man is sitting there when we saying, welcome, welcome to liberty. He want to know how many of them deacons got up and went back there to shake my hand. That's what he want to know. Because he's got a decision to make, all right? We had a couple that's been visiting us for 2 months now. They come to our service. They called the church wanting marriage counseling for me, and they not married to the church. To not kill our witness, I called the man back, told him, when you get to church Sunday, let me meet you and your wife. And I'll set up a date. I can't counsel you because my calendar won't allow me to do a full counseling session, but I'll sit down with y'all 30 minutes to an hour to talk. That's being accommodated. That made a difference to that man, right? That made a difference to him that I took that time, right, to talk to him. So you all are right on track. I'm switching it up on y'all. But I know that you all saw it. I want to hear from you all more than I hear from me. And I'm going to clean it up for you if you miss some points, all right? You know how I am, very spontaneous. Tony Evans in Kingdom Man talks about kingdom men as referees, right? He gives a referee analogy. He draws us into the fact that kingdom men are a group of men who represent God here, right? And they operate off of a rule book. And so I'm going to go to Deacon Greer, then Deacon Barnes. Give me a little bit of Tony Evans' analogy of us as kingdom men, the whole referee thing, and how that impacts us as men.
So when we look at, as Tony Evans put it, as referees, and he used the analogy of going to a football game, and he always talked about the home team, the visiting team, and then the referees, who are the officiators, who get their instructions from a book that they are to guide and have regulations for the football players and the teams to play by. And so he used that analogy as they were coming out of New York. But we as kingdom men, right, we get our rules and regulations from God, because we are representatives of God, made in his image. And men are, not to take anything from the ladies, God mandate us to be the head of our households, right? And what does that mean? That doesn't mean that you have this brute mentality. But it means is that you have to regulate your house according to God's will in a loving and caring manner. Because if you think about it, when Jesus gave what's the greatest commandment, he said what? To love the Lord thy God with all thy heart and all thy mind. And then he said the second greatest is what? To love thy neighbor as thyself. So that's your family, right? And so when we think about that, is that when things are going, we have to get involved as men, starting with your house, right? Because I believe that your marriage is your first ministry, right? Before the church and any of those different things. And so with your marriage being your first ministry and your family being your first ministry, you have to look at your ministry at your home and how God will direct you, right? And so what that means is that you may have to do some things, not deviating from God's plan, but do some things in a loving and kind way according to that person. So you can't speak to, like with my children, I know I can be harsh to one child and not to the other one because I know the other one's going to break down and probably start crying. So I just can't do that. So, and that's God is calling us to be referees and stand in the gap for him and speak the truth.
Excellent, excellent. Deacon Barnes, what did you get out of that whole referee analogy that Tony Evans gives?
Certainly, Brother Greer certainly touched on it. And I think that if we're referees, because we are men of God, we can share that with others that may not be as familiar on the subject as we are. And so I think it's a consistent job that we as men must do, and be able to answer questions that those that may not have a full understanding, to be able to simply break it down to them and share with them. And I think we just need to do more to bring men into the church.
So be able to explain this rule book, right?
Absolutely.
What is it about? Now, we all know there's a paradigm shift in the church in general, probably around the late 70s, early 80s, where you were getting black folks, this was men and women, going away to get educated. And they were coming back to traditional churches, and they began to ask questions, well, why? And the response that they got was, don't ask why, that's just how we do it. Right? And see, what I'm hearing from you is a counteraction to that. We got to answer the why to people, right? Like Ray is saying, why is there a God and I'm hungry? Why is there a God and I've been in jail? Why is there a God my mom died of cancer? We got to take that rule book, which we now know as the Bible, infused by the Holy Spirit, and give brothers, sisters, young boys, young girls, the why that they're looking for. And sometimes the best answer to why is, I don't know, but I know it works when you trust him. That might be all you have, right? But we got to give them something beyond, oh, that's just because God said it. That's been a part of the decline of the church. Men and women want to come and hear why. As kingdom men, we got to take the time. We know what this rule book is, the Bible, and be able to talk about why. All right, Brother Barry Hill.
Okay, Pastor, my take on Brother Tony is when he made that statement about the referees. The referees are following the rules. They don't make the rules. They come from higher up.
There you go, right.
So all they're doing is following the rules. So if a referee's in the middle of the game, he throw a flag, it's nothing personal. It's the rules.
It's the rule.
And we follow the rules. And that's all he's going by. He's not picking a side, or the home team, or the visiting team, or any other team at all. He's just following the rules. So, and that's what we have to do as men.
Yes.
Just follow the rules.
Follow the rules.
Just all lay it out. Just follow it.
Follow the rules. I like that. Ray, did he say it all for you? All right. Pop said it all for him. I saw that look in your eye. You don't have to answer everyone. That's fine. That's fine. Okay. So, Facebook, YouTube, cyber, member people. These gentlemen have broken it down really well for you. I'm going to give you the Cliff Note version, but I really wanted to hear from them because it covered the question. Tony Evans gives the example in session 1 of the video. He gives the example of every Sunday, which we saw this past Sunday, much to our disappointment, that there are 3 teams on the field. There's the home team that everybody's cheering for, the visiting team, and then the other team, which does not get talked about a lot, are the referees. The home team and the visiting team are there to promote chaos. They're knocking each other down, kicking each other, but what keeps that chaos in check are the referees. The referees are guided by the NFL Commissioner's Office in New York. This is what Tony Evans, this is all him, not a Hunt sermon at all. They're guided by the Commissioner's Office in New York, and they are given rules to bring down to the field of play to help manage and stop the chaos. Now, Brother Berryhill hit it very well. They are not partial. They're not partial either to the home team or the visiting team. They are just coming with the rules. It is not their own rules. It is the commissioner's rules. And the commissioner, you all, would be God in our example. It's God's rule. There's a rule book. The rule book is the Bible. And so the referees bring the rule book, or now the kingdom men have the rule book to be guided by in the midst of chaos to bring about stability. It's not about Democrat or Republican, about the rule book. Not about Baptist or Methodist, about the rule book. Not about black or white, red, brown. It's about the rule book. And so as kingdom men, we are referees to not be partial. And the other thing that we're addressing tonight is what would happen, he gives this example, what would happen if the referees didn't show up? If the referees didn't show up, they'd be fighting, helmets would come off, right? It would get so crazy, the people in the stands would start fighting. They halfway want to do that now anyway, right? And so as kingdom men, we have to show up. We have to show up to address the chaos in our communities. Now, this chaos is not simply church-driven. Kingdom men are required, brothers, in more than one place than the church. And see, that is what's critical to us systematically addressing the needs in our community. If the church is going to grow and be prevalent like it once was, the church has to begin to influence beyond the barriers of its corner. It's got to find its way into the house, the homes that feed into the church. The greatness of the church was everybody's home fed into the church. It wasn't outward, because school is like that now too. Everybody wants to school to educate the kids and send them home. Well, when I was 4 years old, my mom was teaching me how to write my read. By the time I got to school, I knew how to do all that. And the school was an enhancement of our progression. But now we're in such lazy mode, we want the church to build the community, right? And so since now things are different, we have to be conscious of that. So as kingdom men, we got to step out of here and be men on our job, men at our home. So this lack of kingdom men is much greater than a church issue, an offering issue, a Sunday school issue. It is a societal issue, okay? And let's read a few stats that he gives us. 70% of prisoners have no father. 80% of rapists have no father. 71% of high school dropouts have no father. 60% of teen suicides, there are no father. 40% of children are born to single women. 70% of black children are born to single women. So, kingdom men, what will we do? How will we rise up? And I want to talk to the camera now because I want to talk to our sisters. Oftentimes when ladies hear this, they kind of thinking to themselves, well, what are we, chopped liver? The men need to come to save us? No, we're not saying that. We're saying that life requires balance. We need our men in the church, our men in our community to rise up and play the role they need to play in the household. It's not that the ladies aren't doing a great job. And this is not going to be popular. So I'm going to take Brother Barry Hill off the hook for those of y'all that like T.D. Jakes. I'm going to take him off the hook. I'm about to say something that's not popular. I love my mother to death. I love my wife to death. They are great mothers, but they could never be a father. It's impossible. And as much as my kids love me, I could never be their mother. Never. I'm not wired to be their mother. And so, yes, some ladies have to be single moms, and they do the best they can, but kingdom men should step up to be mentors because they're just things designed that we as men can add value to. My dad, my father, certainly never could have been the equivalent to anybody's mother had something happened to my mother. Okay? So this whole thing on Father's Day, y'all, brothers, on Father's Day, well, all the fathers who are mothers too raise their hand. You'll never hear me say that. Because we can't do it. We can do the best we can as fathers to fill the gap. This thing on Mother's Day, to all our mothers, and our mothers that had to be mothers and fathers, let's clap our hands. They can't do it. They should be commended for carrying an extra heavy load, but we got to be careful in the world we're living in is trying to get rid of gender, y'all. I hope y'all watching it. Trying to get rid of gender. Some of the natural order that God put in place. So these discussions about kingdom men, refereeing, kingdom men, being present, providing balance for the community, it is not done to be offensive to the strength of our sisters. It is saying, though, that we need to feel our responsibilities. And not just the ones who are not in church. There's more that I can do. There's more that Deacon Barnes can do. There's more that Ray Ray's going to have to do as he's growing up. There's more Randy can do. There's more Deacon Greer can do. There's more we can do. And we need to be guided by the rule book. All right, all right. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you, gentlemen, for that. That was good. I know it was a curve, but I rolled question 2 into making y'all just give me y'all's analogy. Okay, we talked, gentlemen, about being referees, okay? And the last thing that I said, which was intentional, is, and we're going to start with Deacon Barnes this time. I talked about the referees have to be present. Being present is key, all right? And so the question, as we look at us being referees, kingdom men, in what ways can we be physically present but still create a void in our communities or in our homes?
Yes, I think I can use myself for an example. Being a man of labor, you get so wound up in your job and the people you represent, they become number one. And even though you're at home, you're reading through some write-ups and how you're going to prepare your case to win this person's job back. And I'm at home every day and every night, but I'm not really there because I'm not giving my undivided attention to those that love me the best. And I guess in the labor movement, it really don't hit you until somewhere down 15 to 20 years later when you say, all of this time I spent on the road, I spent away from home, I can't get it back.
Right.
You know, so, you know, I use that for example of, yes, you're there, but you're preoccupied.
So we got to make sure that we're engaged and we're mentally present. So, and I think that happens a lot in the church too. You get men that show up, actually love service, but there's a point where we don't get them engaged. And so we got to do more than be present. We got to be engaged. Ray, tell me how you may have seen in your experience as a young man, people being physically there, but actually not present.
Yes, Pastor. Like, for example, my friend, his father is a businessman, very wealthy, but he's never there. Like, he's there, but every time he'll come home, he won't even look at him. Or he'll say, I'm going upstairs into my office, don't bother me. But like, he can always be there for him when it counts for buying books for colleges or classes or buying new clothes or whenever there is a money involved. He's there, sure.
Right.
But he doesn't understand that, yes, I mean, money is good, but money isn't always going to be there here. Like, when he dies, like, he cannot take his money with him.
Right.
But he needs to understand that his son needs to have a talk, like, hey, son, how was your day? How was class? How is life in general? Because he never knows what he's going through. And that can, well, and that can offset his son and make him go down a path that he's not supposed to go to.
Right.
And then he'll say, oh, had this happen. Well, because you weren't there for him in that way where you should have been.
Right. You're hitting it right on the head. You got to be more than just present financially, right? We're all wired to be providers, right? Present company included, right? I want to provide. But we have to also be present. And what we see in the black community, because we all black, right? Okay, I'm going to just check it. What we see in the black community is wealthy people have wealth, and what happens when it comes to the son or the daughter? They don't know how to do anything with it, right? Because I've been providing for you all the time, but I never sat down and said, this is what's going to happen. This is how it should happen. And we do the same thing in the church. We do the same thing in politics as a people. We hold position, and we never tell anybody behind us how to do it. We're present, and we're making it happen, right? We're present, but we're not adding any value. Our presence is actually creating a void by just showing up, right? All right. Brother Barry here, what you got?
All right, Pastor, so my take on not creating a void in the home is pretty much what Ray was explaining. You got to be there and talk to your sons or your daughters, whomever, as far as what's going on with them in their lives. You got to be there when they're doing the homework, as well as going to the games with them. It's not just going to work. A lot of times, especially when I was working on the second shift, I wasn't there, but the wife was there. But on the phone, we was talking about what's going on in school. What kind of homework do you have?
Right.
And send me a picture of it. I'm at work, but doing homework like I'm at home.
Right.
So you don't leave a void at home.
Right.
Because that's when they will go astray.
Yeah.
They're going to hear advice from other kids. And you get all the adults out there who's not on the same page as you are that's giving your son or your daughter advice. Where do you get that from?
Right.
So you have to not create a void. You have to be there.
Right.
Find a way to make it work.
Right.
Even if you have to go to work to survive for your family, get on the phone. again, homework-wise. Wife would take under practice. How was practice? What's going on?
That's right.
How did it go?
Be engaged.
Be engaged.
Yeah, be engaged. That's very creative. You can be present even if you have to work. You know, particularly in this day and age, cell phones, you know, I think about how I communicate with Drew. I can send her FaceTime right now, tell exactly where she is. My parents didn't know where I was when I was in college, right? There's a way we can be connected. Deacon Greer.
Yeah, and so as we think about being physically present in the home, and I get teased a lot by my wife and my granddaughter all the time. You know, they say I take too long to do everything, from washing the car to cutting the grass and just doing some of those different things. And so I think it comes to a point, as Marcella said, we become preoccupied, right? And so you don't want to be preoccupied to create a void in the house, right? I think about when my son was a teenager, right? And so I'm a big fan of mentoring, right? And people being mentors and mentees. And so, you know, one of the things, you know, when my son, when he was a teenager, me and my wife, we talked about it, and I was like, you know, hey, even though I take him to school, we ride together, he doesn't really open up the way that I think he should open up. So I said, why don't we get him a mentor? And Sister Greer, I apologize, you could beat me in the head when I get her. She said, why do we need to get him a mentor? You his father, you should be talking to him. But I revealed to her is that a mentor, by me being his father, he's going to always think that, you know, in most cases I'm wrong. But a mentor is going to keep him honest. And so when he's opening up about his parents and is wrong, the mentor is going to call him on that. And that's what I wanted him to see, is that it's not always about us coming down on you, but it's somebody else telling you the truth, what we see, and we want you to understand that. And so I think more than anything is that you have to love your family, and you can't get preoccupied with things going on outside of the home, right, that you forget about your family,
Right.
because you definitely don't want, as we would say growing up, right, you definitely don't want the streets to raise your kids.
That's right. That's right. That's right. And so it's important that we as kingdom men be engaged. That's what God is calling us to do. He's calling for kingdom men to be engaged in their homes, their communities, and their churches. And so we have had a really good time. Time goes by fast when you're having fun. But I just got a couple of notes for you all as it relates to that. So as kingdom men, we're vowing to be present, engaged. We can, as Brother Barry here walked us into, we can be present even if we're not. Someone typed, it might have been you, Francis. I was looking at the thing that when we talk about being engaged, we need kingdom men to be engaged in church too, right? Not just present, right? And ladies, Lord knows we need you, so don't go on strike. Don't go on strike. Just want to add something to you. Says some men really want to be bench members and not get involved. And so, Francis, what that means is we got to ask why that is. Okay? We got to ask why that is. And we got to figure out what we can create for them to get involved. Like with some of our young men love media. Media was not something that was at the church 50 years ago. But that's something they can do. COVID has given us ambassadors. So people can be ambassadors, not necessarily ushers, but ambassadors. So we got to figure out why and then engage. And we have to be present with all the things that we have going on in our lives, gentlemen. We have to make sure that we're present for our families. I think, I don't know which one of you all said it, that your first family is your home. Your first church is your home, right? You the pastor of that, not me. And that's what runs a lot of men away from church too. Wife going home talking about what the pastor said. Ladies, don't do that. I don't want your husband to stop me getting out my car. Tell people what the Lord said, okay? Not what the pastor said. This is what the Lord said. And the Lord is speaking to me, I'm speaking to you. But going home doing that. So you guys are the pastors of your home. I'm going to drop this last thing on you because I know that if you're not listening to this from a mature mind, this lesson could seem to be misogynistic. It could seem to be chauvinistic, but I want to draw you into a truth in Ephesians 5, and then I'm through. I'm through. You might think this would be quite funny. I married a couple, actually in the backyard of Spencer Jr.'s house about 10 years ago now. A couple been married 10 years. And the couple insisted that I read Ephesians 5, verse 22, women, submit yourselves to your husbands. That's not a text that I usually read because I ain't crazy. I understand the Bible, but I ain't crazy. And so I looked at the wife. I said, are you sure? She said, yep. I said, well, it's God's word. I will read it. I said, but I must read it with an explanation. And so I began to read it, and the ladies began to toss. They began to cross their arms, pop their necks at me. And I read it, and I said, now I want you all to read a verse that has never been read. After it says, women, submit yourselves to your husbands, it says, men, love your wives as Christ loved the church and gave himself for it. That means that this brother has to stand in front of a freight train for the sake of his wife. He's got to sacrifice like Christ for his home. And if you find somebody willing to stand in front of a train for you, then possibly that's worth submitting. Because if we submit ourselves to Christ, Christ always takes our needs before his own. Always. That's a kingdom man. Not a browbeater, not a caveman, but somebody that loves his family and his wife as Christ loved the church. And any man that's not willing to try to achieve that goal is not worthy of being submitted to. Have a good night. I hope we wiped all that stuff out. See you next week. May God bless you and keep you. Let us go to God in prayer. God, we thank you for tonight. We thank you for these men. We thank you for them sharing candidly. We thank you for those that are watching and listening tonight, for their support and their prayers and their encouragement. And so now, God, we're going to ask that you keep us, you bless us until we shall meet again. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. See y'all later. Have a good evening.